also thinks that, or
No, it's from her itself. I think all the light from every angle is
Backlight or something?
triangulating or something. It's a glare that's coming. It's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now it is fine, no?
Yeah.
yeah, should be good. Kanika, I think all the chit chats are done. We can set to go live.
Okay. Just give me 1 second, and I'll give you guys a heads up.
Yeah. Shagun, there is don't unmute thingy.
Hi, we are live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 15 of Psychological Horizons. Today, we are meeting education psychologists, and we are so excited to have you all here to our last and final panel discussions, which is planned out for the past 15 weeks, where we have met different people from different backgrounds. And today, we are closing our panel discussion with education psychologists, and we are so excited to have Shagun and Reshma with us as our panelist and Sanjana as our moderator. To tell you a bit about Psychological Horizon, the aim of this program, curated by all of us, is to help students and emerging professionals understand and stay informed about the multitude of opportunities out there in the field of psychology and mental health. Along with this, developing a realistic picture of things to expect, challenges, and life experiences will aid in hopefully making an informed decision. So that's our aim of Psychological Horizons. And to introduce myself, I'm Varsha. I'm a researcher by profession, and I design questionnaires and I ask questions. So that's a bit about me, and my role here with the Montfort Alumni Association is to work along with Project Psychological Horizons and help curate the program and work around with this. And today, my role here is for an event coordinator and help with the discussion here. So, to introduce our moderator, Sanjana. Sanjana is a counseling psychologist and an assistant supervisor. She has her master's in counseling psychology. She has her own private practice and is an assistant supervisor at Mindful Dating UK. Welcome on board, Sanjana.
Thank you so much, Varsha. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Next up, we have Shagun Narula, who's our education psychologist. She holds a master's in psychology. She has an interest in the field of education and uses her creative skills and knowledge based from psychology as a cross to ensure learning outcomes are achieved in a fun manner. She's currently working in a school and also trains students on life skills as a part of CPSC curriculum. Welcome on board, Shagun.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here.
Thank you. Next up, we have Reshma. Reshma is a mental health counselor at New Horizon College of Engineering. She has a master's in psychological counseling with 3 years of work experience. She has an experience working with kids, adolescents, young and older adults. She's practicing psychotherapist and has experience in conducting online and face-to-face therapy session. Welcome on board, Reshma.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. So, over to Sanjana for the discussion. Have a great one, guys.
Thank you so much, Varsha. Thank you for this beautiful introduction. I think it sets the pace for our live discussion. So to just begin, just dive right into the panel discussion. I was wondering how was it for y'all to upgrade from being a student to dealing with students as an educational psychologist? And maybe we can start with Reshma.
Yes. So when I began, I started working with school students. So I got placed in a school setting. And like you asked me, the transformation was not very difficult, but kind of exciting because personally I love kids and I loved working with students. So it was a great experience. What my role there was to take life skill sessions for students and also help them in their academic as well as personal concerns. We had a separate team for special education, so we were only to look into academic life skills and personal concerns. So in school, most of the concerns that students brought were um, One was like, challenges in learning, difficulty in understanding concepts, or um, very, very small issues like friendships, how to deal with peer pressure and things like that, and also a lot of family concerns. We also had regular meetings with parents, just to, let them know how their student is doing in school and stuff. Other than that, life skills, we had a syllabus, and we had two counselors in the school. So we also helped them to form a syllabus. So we took up the major issues or concerns that we have to talk about, and we framed a syllabus, and according to which we took classes for each grade. So there was two classes a week for each grade, and it was very good. So I felt the first thing that I, as a counselor, needed to do there was to rapport build or have a good relation with students, because it's very difficult to make them trust us, because they feel that, once they open up to us, what if we tell their parents or teachers about the things that they share? So establishing that trust and rapport was really important, and which was kind of exciting for me also. And also about supervision meetings and everything, we had regular meetings with the principal. So we had to let them know about how many students came to us and what we spoke about, but nothing in detail, because they respected confidentiality and stuff. So that was my experience. I worked in school for 2 years, and then I switched to college. It was a very different setting, but I'll talk about it later.
Right. I mean, thank you for sharing what your journey was like with us, Reshma. I think it was just a bunch of learning, unlearning, and just putting all your knowledge to test, just out of college. Yeah, I mean, how about you, Shagun? What was it like for you to upgrade from a student to dealing with students, and what were the different things that you had to pick up along the way in terms of skills, in terms of whatever? How was it like for you?
Right. So, I resonate completely with when Reshma says that she loves kids. Even I love to be around them, and it comes naturally to me. I would say that I have always liked, even if, my cousins were visiting, I would always have that thing to, really help them understand what the kids were asking for, or like taking that extra step to, really spend time with kids. So, but initially, my first job was not this. So, I think this was meant for me, and it came to me rather than, I going to it, because I was definitely moving in a different direction than this. So I used to create content in my first job as a part of that entire job. And to really get insights on the kind of content I created, I used to get in touch with kids, and that's when I figured out that I think I like this better. So in that phase, I relocated back to my hometown and I joined this school. So I am a pass out from the school as well. So I knew that this school was really like, enthusiastic about pushing the idea of mental health and how important it is. So I already knew that I did not have to set the basics here. That okay, this is what I do, this is what I need in a school. So I would say I was fortunate enough to at least have the logistics in place, or like the basic physical setting in place. I have an office that has blackout windows. So it was really like good to know that you are already being welcomed, not just you, but the entire idea that you bring along with you. So that was great. And I think along the way, what I needed to really balance out and learn was to understand that I will not just be dealing with kids, though I like working with them. But since they're kids, I have to also work along with, other stakeholders, like their teachers, who are not kids. Again, like I have to talk to them in a certain manner, which is very different from how I have to talk to a kid, right? And then their parents, and then the other people who are involved in the process. And I can't necessarily overlook that. And I actually have to welcome them in the process as well as a team, right? So that was great. So I think along my journey, I did not have a lot of problem thinking that, oh, this is a stigma and this is how it is, because most of the parents were also aware. So the school is set up in a way where we have uh, kids with us who are like the fourth generation of the same family who have studied here. So it's a relatively older school. It's a more than 80-year-old school. So we had that kind of thing already established, the idea of mental health and everything. However, this still remains a challenge as to how to make them understand what it is, because they can't obviously understand it at the level that we all do. But yeah, most of it is really fun, and like Reshma said, they do expect you to assist them with their emotional and social concerns, also with regards to their academics. So that's where my interest really helps me get through the journey, because I do like to make the process of learning fun. So yeah, I think that has really helped me on the journey, and I hope it will continue to do so.
Right. Thank you for sharing that with us, Shagun. I think from what I picked up from both Reshma and Shagun is one, a love for what you're doing, right? Well, in terms of working with the kind of population that y'all are working with. And also just to understand the relationship, the multiple relationships you'll have in this profession with everybody. You'll have clients, but you'll also have stakeholders that you'll are dealing with. And so with this setup at work daily, I know you'll mention like learning difficulties, academic concerns, just little things. What does your role look like at work on a day-to-day basis? I'll open the platform. Maybe now this time Shagun can start. Can hear from you, Shagun.
Right. So I am placed in the higher section of the school. So I'm in the senior section. So we have two board classes, 10th and 12th respectively. And there is where I would say that is one of the factors because of which I do not have a very structured kind of job as such, because then your roles switch up very quickly. There is automatically a lot of work even from CBSE that you have to be a part of. So even if there is a description that is given to you, your role and your responsibilities are not just limited to that. And most of the days you would see that you are doing much more than what is written on that one document. So for me, typically if it's a regular day at work where people are students are coming in and going at a regular time, I do take my life skills classes that are mandated by CBSE. So I utilize that time to also push the idea of what more I can do, to not just look at me as a teacher, right? So there is much more I can be for them. So that is the only time I get to really convince them or like show them what I can bring to the table and what they are welcome for. So essentially I do have my designated periods. So for me, it is unlike Reshma's. So we have around 7 sections for each grade. So I get one period in each section each week. So that makes about 14 periods a week. And beyond after that, I do spend time with individual sessions where I help them out with guidance and a little bit of counseling as well. However, if there are severe cases with any other, emotional disturbance or any other case that requires clinical supervision, we do have a system to refer it outside the school or somebody who's an expert and we know them who will be visiting the school. So typically that is what the day is like. And many a months they expect you to also build modules to help students with a few topics, or even for teachers to understand what their class may look like. So with changing times, we now are experiencing that the students have even shorter attention span. I mean, come on, they're a generation of reels and shorts. What more do you expect? Like their typical attention span is less than 10 seconds. They expect you to tell everything within 15 seconds. So it should like pop up on the screen and that's it. They should know everything about it. So that is also where I come in and I help teachers understand that this is how you have to work. So after 15 or like 20 minutes of teaching, you have to get their attention back here. So that's where I help them. So most of it is also I meeting the staff with regards to their concerns. And I think that's mostly it. One other thing that's never mentioned on your JD, but you're expected to do, is also be a person between the school as an entity and the staff and the other stakeholders as another entity altogether. So sometimes you also have to do that. So sometimes I have to sit in the meetings where, you know, parents have certain concerns for the school, or like the teachers, and then the teachers have something to say back. So I naturally become the person to, you know, be the communicator and mediator also somehow. So I think, yeah, but overall it's an enjoyable thing. Most of the days look like taking your classes and then taking individual sessions. So yeah.
Right. And Reshma, would you like to add on to what Shagun said and what it looks like from your end?
Yeah, sure. So I would like to talk about the setting in college. So it's kind of a little different from school because coming to college, we have a counseling department in itself, and we have like 4 student counselors and a chief counselor. So what we kind of do, or my role is, we get a lot of referrals, and we because it's an engineering campus, I every individual counselor deals with 3 or 4 departments. So from those departments, we usually get referrals. We have a mentor-mentee system where class teachers are kind of mentors, us chose to be mentors, and those mentors refer few students to us. We also have a referral, a site or a software through which they refer students. And secondly, it is backlog system. So we kind of segregate students who have, a lot of backlogs. So 2 and plus. And then we get a list, and accordingly we call students, and then we talk to them. We ask them why are they finding it this difficult, and we ask if they have any concerns. So we talk to them about that. And third is about being irregular to class. So because it's a college, there are a lot of students who have this tendency to bunk classes, and also they miss a lot of classes, attendance shortage concerns and everything. So also again, we get a list of students who are very irregular who have shortage in attendance, and then we call them, and then we talk to them face to face. So these are usually 3 things for which we call students. And the other concerns that usually come up are relationship issues. Uh, After that, it's substance abuse also. These cases come once in a while, and it's very challenging also. Also, there are financial difficulties and language difficulties that students have. So there are students who come from different parts of India, so they are from different cultural backgrounds, financial backgrounds. So they kind of find it very difficult sometimes to pay fees, or they come with scholarships and then something goes wrong. In the COVID situation, when the COVID was at peak, there were a lot of things that got out of hand. So there were parents or students who lost their jobs, and then they found it very difficult to pay fees and stuff. So we had a lot of concerns related to that also. And language and what is different here is there is a hierarchy. So we have reporting authorities and everything. So I feel it's not similar to a school setting. And also life skills are not mandatory. So we come up with topics, and then we take 1 session per month for each department or each class. So it's either odd semesters or even semesters. So if it's odd, it's third, fifth, and seventh semester. So we take classes on different topics. So if suppose they're going to start with their exams, then we take exam orientation sessions. But it's not mandatory like the life skill classes that we take in school. Whenever these students get time, or whenever we kind of frame something, we are free to go and take sessions for them. So I think, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think from what I gather from the two of you, y'all are also working on an individual level, but also on a collective level, right? Like when you'll get to see clients on a one-to-one basis, but you'll also have an impact or a role to play when y'all are doing like a moral science class or a life ed class. And, also like y'all said, the additional skills or the additional roles that you'll have to keep up with on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm just wondering, with managing all of this, what are the typical challenges you'll face, in your day-to-day work, and how do you all overcome them?
Yeah. So, talking about challenges, there were a lot because, one thing that I've noticed in college is the stigma is still there. And among a lot of teachers, there is lack of awareness. So basically, they feel that students come to us, and what we do is typically advise them to study, or, we ask them about something and we need to share what they told us to them, which is like, that's not what we do. So creating that awareness was kind of very difficult. Secondly, there's a lot of irrelevant work that might come sometimes. It might not be connected to our job role at all. For example, there might be a lot of students who haven't paid fees. So they give us a list and they expect us to kind of call and tell them that this is the last day to pay fees and stuff. Also, asking students about the vaccination status and everything. So I feel this is because of lack of awareness. They really feel that because we are working in this field, they can also expect us to do other small work as a part of our job. So that was kind of very difficult because that's entirely different from what we do. So these were mainly the two challenges. Third, yeah, so because I'm working in a college setup, there is this concept of PDA. So, they also expect us to kind of be or do this moral policing, like ask students to not, sit together. Or if we see two students sitting together, then they send them to us and they ask us to kind of counsel them. That's what they say, counsel, and then kind of ask them not to, showcase PDA in campus. So that was also a great challenge because we tried to take sessions on that, but it's kind of challenging to do that. So these were the few main challenges that I experienced.
Right. And how did you overcome some of these? Because I can imagine like it's so closely associated with your work where they're expected to do something, and there's also the other end of it. How did you overcome some of these challenges, Reshma?
Balancing is kind of very difficult. I personally found it very difficult because that's something that I believe in. So there's some ethics that I follow, and when something comes up to me and which doesn't fit to what I believe in, then it's kind of very difficult to work in an atmosphere like that. So I kind of tried doing, but personally I couldn't. So then I actually stood up and then I told them, see, this is what is related to my job, and this is what I can do. So I'll not be able to take up extra or relevant work that comes to me. But that's again, I found it difficult. I'm not saying everyone who works in the field should find it difficult. So personally, I couldn't. So I actually resigned from my job, and it's been like 2 months because of these challenges.
I'm sure. I mean, like just even picking up tiny things like standing up for yourself as a counselor, and like, I mean, as a professional, there's also a person and there is a professional. And I think, like Reshma said, to balance the two ends of it is quite a task.
And another thing that I would like to add on is we also had this 24-hour lifeline program during COVID. So students were free to call us anytime. So our numbers were shared. And what happened is we didn't have, rest at all. So students kept calling us back to back, and we didn't have a specific work timing. So that also was a challenge because one way I had to be there, and I couldn't balance. So that was also very difficult because it was like asking them that we are telling them that we are always available and they can contact us anytime. But I personally felt that's something that's not needed, because even we should have a proper work timing and we need to balance both.
Right. Establish boundaries around work. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's also very closely associated with the kind of confidentiality you place between you and your clients. Would you like to add on to whatever said, whatever you resonate with, something different that you've had to experience?
Yes. So I think I can completely relate to when she spoke about morals. I would say it isn't same for me, because like I said, it's a it's a pretty open environment when I talk about the school that I come from. However, sometimes when you are in that environment and keeping in mind that the population that I'm dealing with is minor, so you have various other challenges that you need to keep in mind that might crop up. Perhaps they haven't just yet, but they might in the near future. So, like she said, that to decide the proximity that you can maintain with somebody in terms of physical or like otherwise, I think that that is expected of you. However, I would say that somehow in a school setting it is expected of every adult. Like, if honestly, if you could go back to your school time, you would also remember these adults always telling you not to do this, not to do that. And I do come from a point of view where I would say I am fairly assertive. So at times when I have felt that maybe I was asked to become a person that I'm not, I have been quite assertive to say that, okay, here is the thing. And I keep it very open with my students as well. So I refrain from using the words right or wrong. Even in general life, I do not actually place a lot of emphasis on morality as such, the typical idea of morality, of course, because again, like, it could be very subjective, right? For me, what could be right could be something absolutely wrong for somebody else. So, but what I typically assert is that I can definitely guide them to decide their right and wrongs more than I deciding what should be the right and the wrong for them. So I can't be the shooting person for them, but I can be there for them while they decide what is right or wrong for them. So I typically like to give my students a lot of autonomy. And whenever I do invite their parents, they're very open. They actually tell me to actually talk to their parents. They're so open about it. And they do understand that at some point, we all will come to a mutual understanding. It's not like we all will agree to what they all will agree to what I say. It's a mutual thing. They actually do understand that. And that was one of the challenges. And I think recently what I have discovered is that since there is so much on the internet, that it becomes difficult for uh, me to draw the line between the real and the real, because what they see on screen is what they expect. Now, to give you just little example, after 13 Reasons Why the series had come out, they had a very, I don't know, different idea of what a counselor is like. So they all used to, compare me to all of these things that I've seen on this thing, and some of them even told me that, oh, I just wanted to come here because I want people to talk that I am here. So having that constantly in their mind, I call them the Instagram and the other generation, because they're so caught up in that I have to really pull them out of there and place them here, that okay, this is the reality for you. So how do you actually navigate through all of this? That becomes a really difficult thing for me, because also nowadays they have access to Netflix, Amazon Prime, even through the shows that they're perhaps not made for their age group. So that is one of the challenges. But I think what has helped me, naturally, of course, I do not look like in my late 20s, so that one has served a lot for me. And the other thing would be that I constantly keep myself updated on what's happening, even though I'm not really a big fan of OTT platforms, but I do read reviews and keep myself updated, so that when they're saying something, I have something to add on, which in their head makes me more credible. So I think that is an extra effort that I've had to make. And again, that has only helped me, because it helps me break the ice with them really quickly. They know that, okay, she understands what we are saying. She would know what we are saying. And many times I ask them to, the books that they're reading, I ask them when they finish, you should give that book to me. Even I want to know what you're reading about. What is the hype about? So using those slang words with them has helped me a lot. Like, I can't talk enough about it. That has helped me a lot to crack that ice with them. So at the end of the day, they do understand my job role, and they do understand that we all need to cooperate. We actually need to coexist and cooperate in a respectful manner. So yeah, that has been great. And the last challenge, I would say, which is the strength and both the weakness for me as of now, is the number of students that I have to deal with. So I my job enables me to impact more than 1,500 students each academic year, but that also becomes a challenge because as much as I want to reach out to each one of them, it becomes impossible for me to even notice each one of them the entire year. So yeah, I think that is something I'm still figuring out how to deal with, but hopefully I'll have something figured out at the end of it. Yeah. So
Right, that's lovely. I mean, the population you'll work with, the kind of differences, and just the kind of impact you'll have on the different population you'll work on. I think that's incredible. Maybe just a little more to touch on, since we were talking about challenges. What I picked up from what the two of y'all were sharing is, because y'all are some kind. I mean, like in a way, y'all are a bridge between the students and other stakeholders, right? There's also one challenge of building that rapport, maintaining that confidentiality. But on the other end, sometimes students or clients can over-identify with you, right? And then they can just become really close, and then that leads to dependence. So how does that, I mean, how do you all deal with those kind of situations? Maybe Reshma, you can go.
Oh, yes. So I can really students to come and they found this one person who they can openly talk to from all the people in college. So they were kind of very excited. So we had a induction session where we introduced ourselves and stuff. So after that is when a lot of students started coming to us. And what I noticed is they tend to become very friendly. Yeah, so that they tend to like kind of have this dependency that whatever happens, they just come running to our cabins and they just kind of think that we are their friend. So what I kind of do when that happens is let them know, you know, uh, it is a professional relationship and I cannot cross that. And there are a lot of students who used to ask me if they have to call me ma'am, but I kept that as a necessity because I felt that would make the relationship more professional. So that's something that I can relate to. And yeah, the bridge between the students and the stakeholders, that was also difficult because like I said, there is expectations from teachers and from coordinators or from the principal to there's an expectation from us to reveal everything or to share everything that the student tells us. So that was difficult. But then, we told that we have to maintain confidentiality. And I was also, like Shagun mentioned, I'm assertive enough to, openly tell them that this is something that I cannot do or share. And also they expect us to kind of force students to continue the course. So in the engineering setup, there are a lot of students who come to college because they had a lot of pressure from family. They are not willingly coming to do the engineering course, but they are pushed into it. And what the college expects from us is clearly to tell them to stay and not leave. We have to kind of help them stay, but then there is this challenge because the student is finding it very difficult, and because of that the student has emotional concerns. So balancing that was also a challenge. And the second thing that they expect us to do is when there is financial difficulties for a student, the college asks us to inform them about loans and stuff. So they tell us, they direct us to tell them or inform them about these are the opportunities, and they can take loans from so and so organization. So these are few things that I couldn't add on to what I usually do because it was kind of new for me. And the hierarchy or because of people directing and telling us what to do. That was also a challenge. So I tried my best to stand up for myself, and I really did what I felt was right. So that's how I kind of dealt with it.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, how does it look like in the school population, Shagun, with, managing relationships with your students and just balancing that out in some cases where, your students over-identify with you and, and you become the go-to person and there's that sense of dependency. How's it like in the school population?
yeah, I believe that they are a little more dependent on the student counselor because they're still growing up, right? So if I could go back to my childhood, I mean, I would have loved to have somebody I can, immediately run to. And I don't find a problem with that. The only time it becomes problematic is when, like you said, they do not know where to, really draw the line. Because with us, I think what becomes, from my experience, I have never faced a problem where they have, wanted to become very friendly, because I think that is one of the advantages of working in the school, because they already have everybody who's really older than them, and they know that we are the younger ones here somehow. So that age thing already exists. However, I feel the your role or your job as such, your true job, purpose of it gets dissolved if they still have dependency on you, if they're still dependent on you for making decisions, right? So what I'll do is reiterate, of course, all the time that of course I'm here, of course I may be friendly, I may be, somebody you can run to, and still you wouldn't be able to call me a friend, because, and I do that in my classes more than anything. I place the thing there. And I think one of the other things that has helped me a lot is keeping a clear distinction between who I am in the cabin and who I am in the class. So that has helped me a lot, because in the class I keep iterating that this and that is completely different. So my role here would be very different. I can be supportive to you, I can be everything, but I can't be your friend, right? You can't call me your friend. And there has to be a certain line that has to be drawn. And like Reshma said, I think titles help a lot. It helps them also. I keep that in mind that, oh, she's ma'am. So completely they agree, and they kind of have to acknowledge the fact that there is some kind of difference and some kind of authority that I have, which again, like, they might not have. And like you said, sometimes the situation becomes sensitive where they're, sharing very, very close or like personal information, and they might expect you to be their best friend. However, you have to help them understand that the title still remains as the student counselor. I can be there for you. However, what your best friend does versus what I do is completely different. And fun fact, actually, I have used the, you know expertise, I would say, that the students have in, making friends, to push this idea that how mental health professional is very important in a school, and they're completely different from you talking to a best friend. So now they are the ones who have enabled this idea in the school that, oh, this is the problem you're facing, I may be a friend but I can't help you out with this, you have to go to ma'am. So this has helped a lot, because now they also keep revisiting the idea that, is she really a friend? No, she isn't. Because this, I can say this to my best friend, but I can't say this to you. Although they are like still quite grown up as compared to the rest of the school. But yeah, this has helped me a lot, and I think this goes a long way. Would help me in future batches as well, I
Lovely.
hope.
Yeah, I mean, I see the multiple roles you all play in this profession. The role of, like, like some kind of advocacy in terms of spreading awareness about mental health, and even just life skills like assertiveness, placing boundaries, where y'all are, sort of doing it yourself, like they can see that y'all are placing boundaries, and it's important for them, so they can pick it up as well. Yeah, and it's really nice. I was just wondering at this point of our panel discussion, if we could just touch a little bit about the educational aspect of becoming an educational psychologist. I mean, I think we did discuss, luckily, like Shagun's school did have some awareness of mental health, and they had a system in place when she joined, and Reshma's place as well. And with, even though there is awareness of mental health and people do acknowledge mental health, but when it comes to addressing mental health concerns, or when it comes on a personal level, people are still hesitant. So with this kind of environment we're in, when with mental health, and even the educational aspect of it, people can think they can do a certificate course and become an educational counselor. So I mean, like, maybe y'all could tell us, like, what was your educational qualifications, and what is it like to be like a certified, or a professional that's really had a formal education in this field. Maybe we could start with Reshma.
Um, you weren't clear. Did you ask me to start?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so I think I gained it through experience because when I started working in the school, it was a process of learning. So gradually I learned how the educational system works, what are the protocols that they follow, and how, the entire setting is different. So it's not like how we deal with a client in general, but there are a few things that we need to keep in mind while working with the student. So, also understanding the academic setup, was kind of necessary. And I personally feel it's, experience that, help you learn. So after working in the school, I kind of got to know, okay, this is how, the educational system works. And also I told you, like I mentioned before, our inputs were also, taken into consideration when they wanted to frame a syllabus for life skills and stuff. So that also gave me a learning about, what are the different things that are needed for each grade. So taking from starting from like first grade to third grade, what are the necessary things that, we need to teach them, and then coming to preschool, high school, what are the topics that are currently required, what awareness has to be given at each level or stage. So that was also a learning for me, as well as, I also felt very excited to learn about the process and everything. Coming to college, again the setting was different. Understanding that there are so many departments and each department has their own way of working and kind of challenging. And also the departments that I worked with, kind of, in any department, there are a lot of, guy students when compared to girls. So taking triple E, it's kind of a mixture. So understanding that and kind of taking sessions related to that, was also kind of interesting. And yeah, so these were a few things that, I would like to share regarding this.
Yeah, I'm sure. Thank you for sharing that, Reshma, because, like you said, you need to have some prior background in the field of psychology. You can't just pick up like a certificate course and just say, I know the all of it. So it does require formal education. So maybe, Shagun, you can answer what is a formal education or the normal route, right, to become an educational counselor, an educational psychologist or schools counselor. What were the courses that you had to do? Maybe you could talk about that.
Right. I think, like you said, I would definitely push the idea that you must come from at least a master's degree in psychology, and not just a degree in education, because the population that you're going to deal with, at least for school, you may meet people who are, who have already developed a vocab, a language to really express what they're feeling. However, to understand why and how and the what of it, you need to have that understanding through that subject. Otherwise, of course, you'll be listening to them, but you won't be able to understand what they're saying. So, for you to do that, you have to have a background in psychology. And I think with CBSE and NCRT, who are really like pro mental health, and they're really enthusiastic about it, they do come up with a lot of trainings. So CBSE has their centers of excellence based on the regions. So at least for Delhi, Panchkula, and Chandigarh, we have a lot of trainings that happen even online, right? So you can take as many as you want, and many of those are free, like absolutely free, and you can earn a certificate for that as well. So how that goes is that you can just register, and this is open to anybody. So you just need to be registered with a CBSE school. So you can just go to the website, register yourself for any of the workshops that you think are relevant to you and you need that. So you can do that. And many a times you would meet people who are from the same field in your city, and they can recommend a few workshops to you that, oh, I attended this one by this resource person and it was great, for you to build perspective. So I did a few on, adolescence and peer education. How can you facilitate facilitate peer-to-peer thing to advocate the idea of mental health. And then there were 21st century skills for you to pick up the vocational skills that you can push your students to take up. Then there are a few others like thinking, and how do you do the emotional decision making, how do you do the problem solving when you are thinking emotionally. So things like these have been very helpful. And if you want to do a full-time course, there is one that is available for the people who come from any background, and it is by NCRT. So that is a good course that you can all take up. It is for one entire year. It happens in a correspondence mode. But bear in mind that since it's a general course, it will not cover the basics of psychology. Like I said, the school will ask you to have that simply because, like I said, to decode what they're saying, you need a background in psychology and all those skills in place. And when I say a degree in psychology, again, it doesn't mean that you can just have a degree for the mere sake of it. You really need to know the basics, and you really need to also be open-minded to go back and check as to what you're thinking, is it right or not, because one shoe really does not fit like all. So you have to bear that in mind, that you might have things to go back and check. And in that case, I think having a mentor also helps. So since I said my school is relatively an older one, so the teacher who taught me psychology back in the school, back to her and check as to, okay, this is how I'm thinking this case has to go. And we're given full autonomy, of course, doors of the relevant people and get guidance from them. I think that also helps a great deal. So for me, I think personally, education, to understand education, it wasn't that difficult, because I do like to also read up and understand how and where things are going. And personally, the idea of education in a country, for me, is that is the base of everything that you're doing. How your country is going to look like in a few years depends on what you're doing today in schools. So I think it was a perfect place for me to actually explore and experiment with the ideas. And I take it as my personal mission to make sure that everybody who's getting in touch with me and then graduating from school is not just a mere literate, but is actually an educated person, because that's the idea I'm pushing, right? So to really get into that mode, you have to upskill yourself a lot. So like I said, at times I do watch snippets of the shows that they're watching, and to get them to detox from there, I have to give them also something that's equally, say, pleasurable, that they actually would want to sound cool with. So I think that helps. For if you want to take up courses just online, there are a few on Coursera and edX also that you can always take up and upskill. However, the schools need not necessarily ask you for a certificate course or more than just a degree in psychology. However, like I said, on a personal level, an individual should be, from at least my perspective, should be open to really upgrade and upskill themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean,
I
yeah.
I really agree to what Shagun said. A 5-year course is mandatory, and I feel to work in this setting, a person should have a post graduation in psychology, because I've personally had experiences working with colleagues who had literally done a paper in psychology as a part of their social service program, and personally we find it very difficult to work with them because it's difficult to connect. That's one thing I wanted to add on. And while working in school, something that I really liked is, they actually reimburse the supervision payment for us. So we could go attend supervision outside, and then our principal actually forwarded it, to reimburse whatever we spent outside for supervision. That was a really good thing that happened in school. And also we used to get books. So our principal who used to get books from Nimans on life skills and the editions on adolescent mental health and stuff. So it was very useful. So even we got that opportunity to be updated about a lot of things.
Yeah, and well said, both of you. I mean, the place that y'all are in and in the capacity that y'all have to create an impact, I think it constantly requires y'all to evolve as a person, as a professional, because you're dealing with, a student population, right? So, And sure, what does the growth aspects look like for an educational psychologist? Maybe we could start with Shagun.
Right. Um, yeah, so like I said initially, when I started out, al- fortunately, unfortunately, I've still not been able to decide. But Corona happened, and so a lot of us were expected to do a lot many things than what we were doing before. So initially, if I were just taking sessions, now it became my responsibility to also help them out with digital skills and with a few other things, right? So I think for me to engage everybody in the work that I was going to offer to them, I had to make it look very interesting and something that would be rewarding for them as well, without making it look like, oh, I'm teaching you. Because, like I said, I also come from the same school. So many of if I were in their position, even I would feel that, oh, but why do I need to learn? Like, I don't understand the idea. So I think from there, yes, you have a lot of aspects in or areas where you can grow if you don't take things personally. If you are a person who takes things really like to heart, this may not be the field for you, because like I said, the growth isn't something that you can see immediately right there, but like you'll understand how much you've grown in like years to come. You look back and you say, oh my god, I've gotten so much better at the negotiation, I've gotten so much better at convincing people that you need to change this about yourself. So because school is a place where you meet people of all age groups, and in some cases I have even had grandparents involved. So you see, I'm dealing with three generations in one room at the same time and along the same idea. So I think there is a lot of opportunity there. And for a brief while I was also helping teachers with lesson plans, because experiential learning is something that is being pushed in the schools now. And personally, I really like the idea of experiential learning. So that added along with the digital skills that I had an opportunity to develop was a brilliant growth, and that is what I see as an achievement there. And along those lines, it was my individual thing to really explore various pedagogical styles also, because I don't come from a background of education. So for me to convince them that what makes me different is coming from a psychological background, but also I lack the education background thing. So to really get on that level, I had to use the terms that they were familiar with. So I picked that up, but that has only helped me, because even when I'm going to take life skills classes or this thing, like Reshma mentioned, there's a set syllabus, but I don't follow that as such, because I think there are fewer other topics that we need to pick up, but it's not recommended in the books. And there is so much beyond. I think that has only helped me as well, as a person, as well as a professional, to really connect with the population that I'm dealing with, all the stakeholders equally. So there are a lot of opportunities that you can take in, and if you really have to talk in terms of degrees, of course, up till the doctorate level, it is possible for you to take a PhD in educational psychology. So you can take like topics from education and mix it with psychology, or however you want to pursue it. So it is possible for you to do that when you are coming from here. But technically speaking, even in general life, it changes you as a person completely. Yeah. And in a good way. At least for me, it was a good way. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Shagun. What are your thoughts on this?
Regarding growth and learning, for me, every experience was a learning, because as I started working with students, I learned a lot of things, about the way they think, their perspectives, how imaginative, how creative they are, when they talk. And it was a beautiful learning experience for me. And in terms of growth, I would say supervision meetings really helped me, because, like I mentioned, we had like 4 student counselors, so we used to like kind of combine and then talk about a lot of cases together, and we used to brainstorm. We used to pitch in ideas and everything. So that was a learning for me. But personally, I believe that every small thing is a learning. So for me, like the whole experience of dealing with issues was also a learning from me. How much I could take in, the boundaries that I have to set, how capable I am of dealing with the situation that I don't agree with or I don't believe in, how assertive I am. It was a personal learning for me as well. So that's about my learning and growth.
Lovely. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Reshma and Shagun. I think we've gathered some wonderful points along what it looks like to be an educational psychologist in this field. And yeah, I hope our viewers have picked up some, points that they can build on if they're looking to be a part of this field. With this, I'm done with my questions. I'd like to hand it over to Varsha.
Thank you, Sanjana. Thanks for moderating and having such an incredible, insightful session over here. So, up next, I think I'm just going to be throwing some questions at you both. And again, feel free to answer it. Also, feel free to not answer it. And yeah, so I think firstly with Shagun and Reshma, you could also add in. Shagun, towards the end, you mentioned something about experiential learning. And I think that is, knowing you personally, I also know that you're a kinesthetic learner and you enjoy experiential learning. So I was just thinking, how about students? Have you tried thinking about the different learning styles of each students per se, and have you because yours is a generally school setup, and I'm sure you cannot have a specific learning style for everybody. So it should be a multimodal approach. But have you and your colleagues or professors/teachers discussed about a approach of customized learning styles for students?
Right. Yes. Rightly said by you. I do resonate with the idea of experiential learning because I knew what challenges I faced when I was a student because people didn't know about that at all, and how difficult it gets for somebody whose primary learning style is not, say, for example, lecture method, but that is what typically is used in the classrooms. So yes, I've been able to push the idea around and have got a fair acceptance of what I was saying because many a times when it was challenged that would be physically impossible for me to incorporate all that you're saying. But then when they started doing that, as I would say that, okay, try it out for a week and let me know how it goes. But then they would see incredible results in the class and they would come back to me saying that, do you know how energetic my class was today? But then, like the biggest strength has been to really have students on my team. So that has been biggest blessing for me. So what I do is in class 10th, I make it mandatory for them to take a WARC test, which essentially tells them about the learning style. So what that helps me to also guide them with is their learning style, of course. So many a times when they do understand that they're not able to incorporate everything, they try to help their peers out. So now in the class, everybody knows who's the auditory group. They all know who's the verbal group, visual group, sorry, and who's the kinesthetic group. So what they do is team up. So for example, recently I had this discussion in class 10th that they said their maths book looks very boring. It's a typical black and white book and it only has blue borders. So there's nothing interesting going on. So that would be very off-putting for the visual learners, right? So they have started. It looks interesting. So they have doodled in the borders. They have customized their own ways to. Teacher also becomes intrigued that, but is this helping you? And then the student says, yeah, it is. You see, there's a difference here. So for me, the biggest blessing has been dealing with the students. So when they are on my team, I think it becomes very easy for me to convince the teacher also in certain cases. But most of it, they're fairly accepting of the work that I do.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that, Shagun. I think you touched upon the aspect of community-based psychoeducational interventions that you could have in a school setting from an educational psychology background. So I think that is incredible. And I think our country by itself does have some sort of a program for specifically for educational psychology, but it also adds up that you kind of upskill yourself as you are in the field. And I think it you did mention that it's one of your missions to be as good as it is, as good as you are, so that you can give a good result down to the students. Moving ahead, I think with Reshma, I would like to ask, in your student part of your career with the engineering crowd, and you did mention how it is different working with students from a mechanical engineering background with some sort of a gender biases that could exist over there. And I also could hear you were talking about in terms of how different it is in drawing the boundaries where do you act as an education psychologist, or where do you act as a counselor? And in your parts, you were also talking about how you had all these administrative related work that you had to do, and I think that comes in with every other job that you have. It's a quite I think in the discussions we have had so far in Psychological Horizons, we've all Sanjana, you could correct me if I'm wrong. We've seen that every job entitles to some sort of an administrative work, and people do complain about it, saying, "Yeah, that's not in my job description, but we have to do it." So I would say, have you faced a eureka moment in your setup in any sort of a, sorry about that, it was my phone, eureka moment in your setup of this uh, student life in your with these adolescents or early adults, I would say, in the engineering crowd, in terms of, have you tried to talk to them about how you could improve your education or your learning styles or your growth, which is not necessarily something that has to do with policing them, which the college, as you mentioned, was asking you to do. So yeah, do you want to share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. Yes, when I first went to these classes to take class sessions, one thing that I noticed was that these students don't even pay attention to their emotions. They don't even have a check on their feelings. So when we took this class session on self-awareness and we did a feeling check activity, a lot of students told us that this is the first time that they've done something like that. And usually when they feel emotional, they usually suppress those emotions and they don't acknowledge them at all, or they don't really pay attention to it. Secondly, they told us that they are not at all self-aware. No, they don't even have a check on their strengths or weakness, or on their awareness about everything, so in general. So that's something that I noticed when I took the first class session. And then moving forward, like you said, I dealt with three departments: ME, automobile, and triple. So when I went to ME department, there was a gender bias. Students were least interested in mental health, and because of the lack of awareness, I would say, they told me that this is the first time that they're hearing about something like this. That they have a student counselor and they have to give importance to mental health, or things like this. No one has ever told them, or even they haven't really given importance to something like this. So then I wanted to spread this awareness. Like, I took it up as a challenge, and then in few months, I could see the numbers rising. Students coming to our department, were more when compared to before taking these classes on awareness and stuff. So that is something that I wanted to share regarding my personal experience. And yeah, to add on, I'm currently not getting anything, but
No, no worries. No worries. But thanks for sharing so far. I think pulling in some sort of a mental health well-being in a college setup to help students stay in track so that they can progress in education also is important. I think there is some sort of a blurry line with a school counselor and an educational psychologist at some point. However, with Shagun's area of work, it shows a lot of interventions that she could practice on. But when it moves to the college purposes, I think it's more of asking them to be in touch with themselves firstly, and then think about any sort of an educational interventions that you could do as an education psychologist. So it
that is
kind of, yeah, it kind of plays a part. Sorry, did I overspeak over you? Did you say something?
Yeah, I
Reshma?
was saying, it's actually true because, like Shagun said, to categorize them, to understand what kind of learners they are is kind of very difficult. And I've never done it in college, or no one from our department has even tried to, kind of understand that because we started from the basics. That is kind of the higher level thing to do. So even the basics was missing. So we started with making them self-aware, spreading the awareness of what mental health is, how important it is. So that was the process.
Yeah, but definitely good job on spreading the mental health awareness. I think all of us are advocates of mental health. Both of you had touched upon, but I want to get some sort of a clarity on it. What sort of a habits have helped you to keep track of in your career pathway? Like, what are the habits that you have on a day-to-day basis that has helped you to keep track? Either of you could go. It could be like, say, when we were talking to one of the, I don't know whether it's researchers or PhD scholars, they told that their habit is to actually read scholarly articles on an everyday basis to keep track on their field. So in terms of education psychologists, do you have anything specific for that, as if I can add in, Shagun, if is it something like you are trying to keep track of the social media that students use, so that could be your mode of communication to them, and that is also developed as an habit, if I can say it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I think yes. So one of the things that has really helped me is to really keep up with the Gen Z trends. Because that is a appear that I am on their level. So it just helps me gain that comfort quickly. It just doesn't mean that it's a short way to get it, but like I know that it helps me in most of the cases. That when they say that, oh, have you heard of this character from this movie? So if I say, oh yes, I do. What part of it do you relate to? So immediately it becomes very comfortable for them to help me understand what it is like. So again, like helps me as well. I think more than that, like I said, to be in this field, you also, I think, need to be a little bit creative. So it's not like you have to be born as a creative person, but I think what you can do is really keep in check with what are the different ways I can make them do this thing by not making it look boring, because trust me, they're bored of everything and so quickly, right? So every classes, it was very difficult for me to ensure attendance, and at times I have used Google Forms to create much to bring them to the class, and magically it has helped me so much that my if my average class attendance would be 10 people, it went up to 40, because they was that intrigued. What is happening in the class? Oh, so this is how you crack the code. Okay, this is how you go ahead. So the regular screen had become so interesting for them that they wanted to come back. But again, like, it was not just games. It also has to have a message, because that is the amount of attention I have from them, right? So I would bring in that. So once you have crossed a level, there's a journal prompt that you need to answer. So my biggest achievement, or like the time that I felt low in the entire week, was when. So they have to answer something, and only then they can go ahead to the next level. So this is to the extent that you need to really keep doing something. So in my free time, I try to read up more on what people are doing, and a tool that has really helped me is Pinterest, because I think that's a very good resource if you want to pick up worksheets, and if you're not a person who can design worksheets as such. So I think there are ready to use materials there, and I would want to make my account public. So even if any of the viewers want to watch it or use any of the content that I've created, I'm very open to sharing that. So even if you need like access to the Google Forms that I've created or anything, I can definitely share that. And I think that goes a long way over this. And the third would be reading up. Always keep in touch with what's happening in your field. That helps a lot. So yeah, I think that's a really good habit. And in general, I think when you're dealing with making it look like you're complaining to them or anything, there role is also important in their child's life, right? So talking to them will help you understand a great deal about what's happening to the child. So without really making it very evident that the child is coming early, I think keeping in touch with them, or just generally that, oh, did you, what do you talk about during tea? What do you talk about during dinner? Ma'am, has he ever prepared tea for you? Have you ever made Maggie for him? Have you ever eaten together? Things like these help a lot. They have helped me. So I think, yeah, that really works well. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just one last thing, just one last thing. Also, please keep in check or like be self-aware as well, because many times your biases may really reflect on what you're saying to students, being mindful of your language. So automatically consuming content that is children's own side, because you can't pour from an empty cup, so you might as well be like in touch with your own emotions.
Yes, and how do you overcome of that? And I think you touched up on how it is important to stay aware. Reshma,
Yeah,
you
so
were
I was
adding
saying I
something.
totally agree with what Shagun said. The approach is very important. So when you go to a class, I think wait, because like she said, they are like so done with all these lectures. So we kind of tend to see how we can bring in something new, so they also will be excited. So what I do is I also carry worksheets. Maybe when we make a PPT, we or add on a video or something that's really interesting, and that will make them think and reflect about a lot of things. So one site that I use is Therapist Aid. I think it has worksheets and which are kind of useful. And yeah, also about not being biased. So there would be a lot of situations where you want to you kind of have this tendency to give in your own inputs or your suggestions and everything, but I feel it's very important to be mindful about what you're saying and what you are
Yeah.
saying, and what you think, and how to be neutral, not to be biased, is also a learning process.
Definitely. I agree with you, Reshma. I think at some point in the conversation, one of you mentioned about how the students that you're dealing with today are the future of tomorrow. In that lines, you were speaking something, and it is very important on what you say to the students is also equally important, because that is something that you will carry for a lifetime. I mean, I'm sure some of us can relate to it that uh, definitely one of the mean or a not so mean statement told by your teacher back in your school will come a long way with you, and you'll have to be sitting through sessions of therapy to process that. Right? So while you're in that role of being in if you can make a life better for the student, why not? So I think as an education psychologist, both of you, one is speaking in advocacy of improving the mental health for the students in the college level, which is very important because of the continued stress that they would have as they would push themselves from all the college, should I call it shenanigans, or and move towards a life of joining a adulthood where they pursue career. All of that stress would come a long way for them. So having mental health in the first place is very important, and having that tone to them in education itself is important. And in terms of how Shagun was speaking in her school purpose premises, sorry, where it is important to understand the different learning style. And I really like the approach of making the students of 10th grade understand what's your learning style. I really wish there's more research done on that, because if you can implement that in a very middle school level, nothing like it. I know there's a lot of research that is done with learning style by itself. It could do. I think I was reading some quotes with UNICEF, which was saying, quote unquote, UNICEF is committed to ensuring all children in India have access to inclusive and equitable quality education. So I think somewhere when we were having the conversation, my heart was going out to students who who might not have access to mental health, who might not have access to educational psychologists. And like India is doing great in terms of how we are slowly progressing towards having a good number of students turn up to schools. But equally, we have a lot of students drop out. So I think there's a research by National Achievements Survey by the NCRT in 2017, which
Yes,
says,
NAS.
yeah, which says that half of primary school going children, which continues nearly 50 million children, sorry, which constitutes around 50 million children not achieving grade appropriately in their learning levels. So when I was estimated 6.1 million children out of school in 2014 reduced to almost 13.46 million in 2006. So there is a lot of stats which keeps proving in terms of students going to the school and students dropping out from the school, and all of that stats was just making me think that, well, in terms of learning styles, well, do we have an acting psychologist in the school premises who helps the student in achieving their learning styles, in achieving their learning growth, or do we have a mental health advocate who's talking to them? Of course, I think there should be a multi-modal approach here. You will probably work around with social workers or teachers per se, students, and cultural differences will also sit in place because our country is incredible. And I always love saying that how India itself is a different subcontinent. You have to consider it as a subcontinent. Every 100 kilometers, we have changes in cultures and everything. So I was just thinking of how students from the rural children in a higher community setup enjoy when they have an educational psychologist acting in to help them create a proper learning style. But then I think I would just say it's a food for thought and something that we'll have to chew on. We can't really comment on how the status of it is, but it all looks in a progressive nature as far as the statistics is concerned, of how the right to education and how the Ministry of Women and Child Development and other government firms are working towards continued education to children. So I would just like to end those thoughts by, we have a long way as a country to go in terms of bringing education psychologists accessible even to students in rural India. So that's my thoughts on it. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. And I think the idea of education as such, like I said, it's not merely literacy, it's much more than that. So,
Yep.
I think, yeah, like what you said, completely resonate with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Shagun and Reshma, for that. Do you guys have any other closing thoughts or questions for us? Or any questions for our viewers, thoughts for our viewers? Questions for our viewers? No, sorry, I meant thoughts for the viewers. Sorry about that. Well, yeah, I think we are good in that case. We've had an incredible 1.1 hour, 1.5 hour almost of discussion, and I think we've touched upon different various parts of education psychologist and try to understand much around in that background. And we're going back home, at least personally I'm going back home with a lot of thoughts for the education in the country and the role for education psychologists, because I completely believe students of today are futures of tomorrow. So it is very, very important to think on those thoughts. On that note, it's been an incredible opportunity with the Montfort Alumni Association to have the Project Psychological Horizon close its panel discussion for week 15, and it's a great achievement for us with our incredible team of volunteers who had their continued effort in pulling these things together. And we've met different panelists from a different batch from Montfort, sitting in different time zones, making their time to just talk to us. So though we finish a panel discussion, we are not stopping the Project Psychological Horizons yet. We still have almost 4 more weeks to go, where we're meeting individual one-on-one conversation with sports psychologists, and then we have aeronautical psychologists, and we have forensic psychologists, and somebody pursuing PsyD. So we're going to meet these individuals on a one-on-one conversation in the weeks to come, and we are excited to all see you all there. And in case you're watching this video later, you could also go back to YouTube and check around the other videos that we have. That's it. So we're all signing off. And thank you for being with us. And thanks for incredible sessions, Anjana. You did a brilliant job in moderating it. And thanks, Shagun and Reshma, for adding your valuable thoughts to
Thank you so
this.
much, guys. It's such an honor to be here, and it was a very, very fruitful discussion. Thank you so much, Reshma, for being here, and Sanjana for moderating it so well. Couldn't have asked for a better moderator, I guess. And thank you, Varsha, for everything, even Team Psychological Horizon, for really organizing it so well. Such a smooth experience to be. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. It was a great experience. Thank you for inviting me. It was my pleasure. And yeah, it's a very good initiative. I've seen like a few discussions on YouTube, and it's a great thing that you guys are doing. I really appreciate.
Thank you, Reshma. Thank you, Shagun, for both of you for your lovely, kind words. And all right, then, see you on the other side, signing off from today. Bye bye.